I'm 92 years old, and after coming home from my friend's funeral today, I realized something deeply unsettling. I sat alone in my living room, still wearing my black suit, staring at nothing for a very long time. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. Old memories kept appearing like visitors I never invited. But that wasn't the strange part. Something else felt different, and I couldn't immediately explain why. The worries that once controlled my life suddenly felt distant, almost imaginary, like stories belonging to someone else. I didn't understand this until much later, and that's why I'm telling you this story today. For 42 years, I taught history at the same high school in a small American town. Every morning began before sunrise, with coffee brewing while I reviewed lessons and graded assignments. I believed responsibility was everything. Show up, work hard, provide for your family, keep moving forward. It sounded noble, and maybe it was, but something important was quietly happening beneath the surface. I worried constantly about money, even during years when we had enough to live comfortably. I worried about what neighbors thought, what coworkers thought, and what strangers might secretly think. Looking back, it's exhausting just remembering how much mental energy those worries consumed. My wife, Margaret, often noticed things before I did and gently tried warning me. She would sit beside me after dinner and ask why I seemed worried again. I usually answered with practical concerns, bills, retirement plans, career goals, future uncertainties, endless calculations. She would smile softly and say, "You're carrying tomorrow before today even finishes." At the time, I thought she simply didn't understand the pressure I felt. But life has a way of revealing truths slowly, sometimes decades after the conversation ends. During my 30s, I chased promotions, recognition, and the feeling that I was accomplishing something meaningful. Every achievement felt important for about 2 weeks, then another goal appeared on the horizon. I convinced myself happiness lived somewhere ahead, just beyond the next accomplishment or milestone. And this is where life surprised me, though I couldn't see it happening then. The finish line kept moving every time I got close enough to touch it. By 45, I was respected professionally, but internally, I felt strangely unsettled and restless. I spent evenings balancing budgets while my children watched movies together in the next room. Sometimes they invited me to join them, and sometimes I said maybe later. Maybe later became one of the most expensive phrases I ever used. Not financially expensive. Life measures certain losses with entirely different currencies. Years passed quietly, the way years often do when you're busy planning for the future. My son left for college. My daughter started her own family. Margaret's hair slowly turned silver. I noticed these changes, yet somehow failed to fully experience them while they were happening. I kept believing there would be more time later for appreciation, conversation, and presence. Then retirement arrived much faster than I expected, carrying emotions I wasn't prepared for. On my final school day, students applauded, colleagues gave speeches, and photographs were taken. Everyone celebrated the career I had built, yet I felt unexpectedly empty driving home. The next morning, nobody needed lesson plans, nobody expected grades, nobody required my expertise. For the first time in decades, I sat quietly with myself and felt uncomfortable. Something happened next that changed everything, though not all at once. Friends started passing away one by one, each loss arriving closer together than the last. We had shared classrooms, fishing trips, weddings, birthdays, and conversations stretching across entire decades. Suddenly, their chairs were empty, their phone numbers disconnected, their stories permanently finished. Every funeral felt like turning another page toward a chapter I couldn't avoid. Yet today's funeral affected me differently from the others, and I think I know why. My friend Robert and I had worried about many of the same things. We worried about investments, appearances, reputation, status, and countless problems that seemed urgent. Standing beside his casket, I realized none of those worries had followed him there. Not one concern that dominated his conversations occupied that room today. People remembered his kindness, his humor, his loyalty, and how he treated others. Nobody discussed his old anxieties. Nobody praised his stress. Nobody celebrated his worrying. That realization stayed with me throughout the drive home and into the evening silence. I sat in my suit, staring across the room, asking questions I once avoided. Why had I spent so much of life protecting things that were never truly threatened? Why had I carried fears that vanished the moment perspective finally arrived? Then another thought appeared, simple yet powerful enough to change everything I understood. Age doesn't always add answers. Sometimes it subtracts illusions and leaves only what genuinely matters. But the biggest mistake I made wasn't money, career ambition, or even working too much. It was believing every worry deserved equal attention simply because it felt important at the time. That's when the lessons finally became clear, and they arrived with surprising simplicity. First, other people's opinions matter far less than you imagine while living your daily life. I bought nicer clothes and bigger things, hoping certain people would respect me more. Most never noticed, and those who noticed quickly moved on with their own concerns. Years later, I realized everyone was busy worrying about themselves, just like I was. Second, being right is rarely worth damaging a relationship that could have been preserved. I remember arguing with Margaret about insignificant household decisions that neither of us remembers today. The argument felt important then. The companionship mattered infinitely more, though I learned that later. Third, perfection is a demanding master that never rewards loyalty the way you expect. I spent hours refining lessons students would forget within months after graduation. Excellence has value, but perfection often steals joy without offering anything meaningful in return. Fourth, comparing your life to others creates dissatisfaction even during seasons of genuine blessing. There was always someone earning more, achieving more, traveling more, or receiving more recognition. Comparison kept moving the target, making gratitude nearly impossible despite abundant reasons for appreciation. If you're watching right now, ask yourself what worry occupies your thoughts most often. Then ask whether that concern will still matter 10 years from now. The answer might reveal more about your priorities than any productivity book ever could. Fifth, waiting for the perfect moment is often another way of postponing life itself. Margaret wanted road trips, small adventures, and spontaneous weekends while we were still young. I kept suggesting later, after retirement, after savings goals, after responsibilities became lighter. Some of those trips never happened because life quietly changed before conditions became perfect. Sixth, small embarrassments disappear quickly, but missed opportunities can remain for decades. I avoided certain experiences because I feared looking foolish or making mistakes publicly. Nobody remembers those potential embarrassments now, but I remember the opportunities I declined. Fear often exaggerates consequences while minimizing the cost of inaction. Seventh, the future deserves preparation, but not at the expense of the present moment. I spent years mentally living tomorrow while physically existing somewhere else entirely. The result was a strange absence from parts of my own life story. Looking back, the meaningful memories were rarely connected to the worries consuming my attention. They were conversations, laughter, ordinary dinners, unexpected kindness, and moments I nearly overlooked. That's the strange thing about memory. It preserves what touched your heart, not your anxiety. The worries once felt enormous, yet most dissolved without requiring nearly as much attention. The moments I almost ignored became the treasures that remained after everything else faded. If you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, please listen carefully to an old man. Don't wait until 92 to discover which concerns were never worth carrying. Work hard, certainly. Plan responsibly. Care about your future. Those things still matter, but don't sacrifice today's relationships, experiences, and peace while protecting an imagined tomorrow. Call people while they're still here. Take photographs. Sit quietly with someone you love. Let ordinary moments feel important because one day they'll become extraordinary memories. Life rarely announces which moments will matter most before they happen. That's why presence is so valuable. It allows you to actually receive your own life. Tonight, my suit still hangs nearby, carrying a memory of a friend's final goodbye. And strangely, I feel lighter than I did many years ago despite being much older. Not because I found every answer, but because unnecessary worries finally lost their authority. The concerns that once ruled my days now feel almost unreal, like shadows mistaken for substance. Age didn't hand me secret wisdom. It simply removed distractions until the essentials remained visible. If you're lucky, you'll learn this lesson much earlier than 92 years old. When your own life reaches its later chapters, what will you wish you had stopped worrying about sooner?